Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Camille began to twist her head in front of the mirror, trying to see her hairstyle. The hairdresser almost pulled an extra strand of hair away from her and told her not to do it again. So threateningly she said, "Sit up straight, or you'll end up bald." "Miranda, I need to see what's going on. When I'm done, you can look at it then." Miranda was Camille's own sister, so she treated her like that. There were rarely any misunderstandings between them, and all disputes were settled by compromise. However, as big sister, the difference was 3 years. Miranda sometimes had a commanding manner, and she seemed to like it a lot. "And if I don't like it," Camille pleaded. "It's all right, we'll fix it." Miranda replied with humor, "This is the 3rd time you've come to see me this month. Are you not satisfied with your own appearance?" "I can't decide on an image, honestly. As soon as I plunged into business, I want everything at once. And there are so many worries that I can barely keep up." "Oh, come on. Don't be so smug. It's only a small cafe, and there's not enough customers to get tired. If you can't keep up, ask your son and daughter-in-law to help you." "You're wrong about the customers. Some days there are no vacancies," Camille corrected her. "As for William and his fiancée, I'd rather invite strangers. My son didn't take my advice. Now he'll have to make his own way." "You shouldn't do that, sister. He won't forgive you." I shook my head. "Miranda, mark my word, you'll have to ask him for help. Only it won't be too late. I can handle it myself." With a frown furrowing her brow, Camille replied, "And get your hair done." "I have to get back to the cafe," Miranda continued, her sister. But at the same time, she was slightly offended by her attitude towards her own son. William was considered the most promising assistant in the business. He had a degree in economics, but at the moment he was investing his knowledge in the development of another firm, and he could have worked at his mother's cafe to make it even more profitable. But no, Camille didn't want to see her sister-in-law Lisa as a rival, especially since they had different characters and views on life. Not only that, her sister-in-law initially seemed to her a wiretapped and uneducated girl. She had a wrong opinion that they were not a couple and that they were different. Camille had too high an opinion of herself. Despite the fact that she had nothing to do with powerful people, the cafe didn't give her any preferential treatment, but she told everyone she knew that she ran a serious business. Of course, they tried not to argue with her and just nodded their heads. But behind her back, they would say things that would make your hair stand on end. It is possible that Camille knew about it, but did not pay attention. She believed that all means are good for achieving the goals, and if necessary, it is possible to go over the heads. Well, now it was all set. Miranda finished and showed the result of her work. "What's not bad? I would even say stylish." Camille replied with a bow of her lips, satisfied. "I tried. So you owe me a bonus." "All right, I'll tip you." "Well, thank you, and you're welcome." "What was that about?" "Your hair on your head." "You mean your hair?" Miranda waved her hand. "Oh, I see. Humor in all its glory." Camille nodded. "Then hold on, the Joker deserves it." She opened her purse and took out a $3,000 bill and handed it to Miranda. "You took it carefully and tucked it into your apron pocket. Thank you for such a generous tip." "Oh, come on. It's not like we're strangers, and I have something to pay with, especially since you got your hair done. I just made myself look like a real businesswoman. And now no one can say you're just a housewife." "They're right to a certain extent," Camille shrugged. "I spend most of my time at home in cafes and come back every other day, and then only for important issues and business meetings. But that's not the point. The main thing is that you like it. And think about your son. He's just starting his family life. He needs your support. We'll see. I can't promise anything. But by the way, I've done everything on my own, and nobody gave me anything for free. I had to literally grind my teeth to find my own piece of happiness." "Did you do the same with the cafe?" Miranda asked slyly. "I don't know what you mean." Camille shook her head. She pretended that she didn't get the meaning of the question. And about the money you used to open it. And it's not just a gift of fate, but a serious investment. Except if it doesn't work out, you know what's gonna happen. Everything will be fine. I'm sure of it. And there's no need to jump to conclusions. My cafe is just gaining momentum, and soon you'll see a real surge in traffic. People will be coming in from all over the neighborhood. Well then, I wish you success. Miranda hugged her sister and on full automatic fixed her hair. The bee had gotten a little confused. I'm sorry I got a little emotional with you. It's okay, I'm used to it. Camille waved her hand. You've always been big and fit, not like I'm skinny and short. You took after your mom and I took after my dad. And that's something to be proud of. You're right. They gave us a life and helped us make up our minds. Thanks again for the haircut. I'll stop by if I have time. Okay, maybe Saturday. Miranda sighed and shook her head as she looked at her sister. Apparently, she didn't like Camille's attitude toward life's priorities, and above all, her negative reaction to her own son, who had done nothing wrong, except that he had gotten together with a girl without listening to her advice. However, William was 25 years old, and he had every right to control his own destiny. After he started living with Lisa, he never asked her for money, all because he did not want to humiliate himself, knowing his mother's temper. Besides, he didn't want to look like a worthless man in her eyes. But what's interesting is that Lisa didn't reproach him for their humble existence. She herself worked at the market, traded things, and also earned in the general family budget. However, William was not in a hurry, and with the registration of relations, agreeing to a civil marriage. Between them, initially formed trust and mutual understanding, and Lisa calmly treated that as something William said, "We will have to live like this for 6 months or a year to save up for the wedding." And then he also made it clear that he would not go to his mother to beg for money. It's not to say he was proud. It's just that there was a precedent when he had to overstep his own principles. This incident happened right after graduation. William urgently needed money, and there were no other options but his mother at that moment. But after her answer, he lost the desire to turn to her for help for the rest of his life. She unashamedly said, "Son, you are an adult now, so solve your own problems and don't come to me for a handout." It sounded rude and hurtful. William didn't expect such a response. It was like he'd been hit with ice water. It turned out that he did not turn to his mother for help, but came to beg. And this is despite the fact that at that time she did not yet have a cafe, and she worked as an ordinary accountant at the factory. However, already at that time, Camille began to think of herself as a high-flying man, and did not pay attention to what they thought relatives and acquaintances. She had no remorse for her mistakes and missteps. On the contrary, she put them in the rank of gaining invaluable experience, and braved the fact that everything has its time, and soon everything will change for the better. But it took time and years for the business to become a lifelong endeavor. It is likely that Camille was aware of this, but did not accept it as a settled reality, and moved forward according to some specific plan of her own. At the same time, the problems that came her way made her more and more nervous, and made her look back. And Camille began to notice that it was not so easy to manage the business. However, she could not admit it to her closest circle, and above all to her own sister, because Miranda was on good terms with William. On the one hand, it was a vicious circle, which she created herself. On the other hand, there was an opportunity to get out of the trap. The second option promised prospects for development and growth. But for that, she had to agree to Miranda's proposal. Her sister had hinted that William could use her help. What she didn't say was how best to do it. Given the way things were between Camille and her son, it was hard to imagine them reconciling. Besides, he didn't live alone, and that meant that she would have to take her daughter-in-law on bail and share the family life with her, despite their differences and divergences. Camille could not yet decide on this step, because in this case would have to come down from heaven and do what her son did when he asked her for money to overstep his own principles. After weighing the pros and cons, she came to the conclusion that she could do without his help. She even said out loud, "It doesn't hurt to need someone else's handouts." And this meant that she categorically denied any interference in her business, did not want to share it with anyone, much less show the real state of affairs. And if her son found out, he would have a reason to ridicule her, and in her opinion, the rest of the chain would get the information. In general, Camille was so intimidated by herself that she didn't even want to hear about any help. She was constantly seeing the snide faces of her relatives, and she was not going to let them pounce on her like a pack of hungry hyenas. She was pulling her weight with all her might, refusing to accept the harsh reality. When Camille arrived home, the first thing she did was to take a shower and wash off the rest of the day, except for the hair salon. She also visited the cafe and solved some organizational issues. The manager showed the reports for the week, and in general, they were more or less optimistic. Not to say that the place was making a fabulous profit, but so far it seemed to be able to stay afloat. I prepared a light dinner. Camille turned on, relaxing her music, and sat down massage chair. It was set to the right program. And after a few minutes, she felt an inexpressible sensation. Euphoria. Such an impression as if she was in the tender hands of a real masseur. And he carefully, with extreme precision, relieved the tension all over her body. This attitude to relaxation suggests that Camille loved herself more than anyone else. At the same time, selfishness partly offset by a cordiality to those who were on good terms with her. Well, or didn't try to put sticks in her wheels, and generally showed proper respect, even if one wanted to make remarks. Criticism hurt her ego, and Camille could lose her temper, regardless of personalities. True, quickly calmed down, realizing that this is not the way out. To some extent, she retained her common sense, and she did not allow herself too sharp steps. Restraint in her emotions sometimes saved her from the most disastrous consequences. What happened the next day, however, unleashed a wave of indescribable anger. Waking up at 10 o'clock, Camille planned to go out of town to her best friend. Miranda Long invited her, but they still could not meet. Now she had the opportunity to visit and talk about buying a plot of land. In her mind, she wanted to build a cottage and grow flowers there, so that she could invite her friends and acquaintances and brag about the blooming garden. But the trip had to be canceled because of an urgent call from the manager. Stephen was gasping for air as he spoke into the phone. "Camille, this is just nonsense. We didn't realize it ourselves. He came in and gave us a hard time, and he said we were gonna be in big trouble. Yeah, like they explained what happened in the exam." She gave the manager a hard time. "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm worried and anxious. The thing is, we got a visit from the SS, and they found some irregularities. If we don't fix them by tomorrow, they'll close the cafe." "What did you find?" "Stephen, open alcohol in the kitchen, ventilation problems, poor service in the lounge, and a few not washing their plates." The manager replied with a tremor in his voice, "But Emily and the waiters have nothing to do with it. They do their job properly. I have no complaints about them." Camille muttered angrily, "But Rick will have to be dealt with severely. I've seen him leave bottles open by the stove. I wouldn't be surprised if he's drinking them too. So what do we do now? We've got to get this fixed by tomorrow, or we'll have to close the cafe. And I'll figure something out. In the meantime, you clean up where I'm not needed, and don't let anyone slack off, or I won't see you, my staff, and I'll hire another team. All I have to do is snap my fingers. Yeah, I got it. You got it." The manager's voice was shaking, and it spoke of how he had become in the face of her threats. At the same time, the confusion from the first minutes of the conversation suggested to Camille that he was barely coping with the duties assigned to him, and he was bound to fail at some point. But what to do? She didn't know yet. However, certain thoughts were in her head, and the main one was to invite her son to help her. But before doing so, Camille intended to solve the problems herself and not to waste time. She called the inspectorate. The director of the organization answered and hinted at money. All that remained was to collect the necessary amount of money, hand it over to the right person, and that was the end of it. However, this option did not suit her, and all because she was afraid of the continuation of extortion. In other words, she would have to give a hand now, and then she would have to pay back all the time. But time was running out, and no one was going to forgive them for their violations. Not only that, but more serious problems could arise. Camille had already imagined what it would be, but there was nowhere to go, and she began to look in her notebook for her son's phone number. There hadn't been any calls lately, so it wasn't saved in the outgoing calls. But tears came to her eyes when she saw the signature, Sanulia. No matter what you say, but her heart felt her own daughter. And no matter what was going on between them at the moment, there was still a response, holding a pause, as if it was the riskiest move for her. Camille dialed William's number. 3 beeps sounded before he answered. "Hello, I'm listening." "Hello, son. How are you doing?" "Hi, Mom. I'm fine. And if you mean I'm not starving and going around the world with my hand out, you don't have to worry, do you? We have everything we need to live." "I wasn't going to talk about that," Camille replied, and with barely restrained emotion, "I just wanted to know how you were doing. I don't need much, just a piece of your voice." "You heard my answer," William said unhappily. "Something else? Or can we stop talking?" "Wait, I have something to tell you. Just don't interrupt and take it seriously. I don't want you to feel like your mother was a helpless person. Are you in some kind of trouble? That's where you should have started. And don't think about how I'm gonna react, despite our differences. You're my mother, and nothing's changed lately." "That's good to hear, son," Camille replied, almost crying. "I thought you'd forgotten we were related." "No, Mom. But unlike you, I didn't put up barriers. And if you've called to ask for something, you can count on me. The thing is, William, my cafe needs a competent manager, and I'd like you to take the job. But if memory serves, you have a Stephen there. And he seems to be doing okay." "Exactly. It's like a problem shows up when you weren't expecting it." She interrupted her son. "Sometimes I think the staff create them on purpose." "I don't think so. Although I don't rule out that some of them are negligent in their duties." "That's not surprising. It's not like you're there that often." "Well, they're feeling the pinch. I knew you'd say that. I never doubted your insight. So, what are you gonna do? Take over?" "I don't know. It's kind of sudden. Especially since I have a job." Stephen hesitated. "I need to think about it. Besides, you know I'm not the only one who makes decisions." "Yeah, well, Lisa has a say in your family too. And you can't quit your job." Camille replied with a heavy sigh. "But on the other hand, one head is better than two. You can combine them for now. And at the same time to think up such a plan of action that all enemies and competitors would be jealous. We don't need enemies, of course, but we can compete with our rivals. Besides, healthy excitement only inspires great achievements and gives confidence that you are on the right path. And I can take that as a yes. I think it is. But I'm not quitting just yet. So I'm sorry, son. The problems need to be solved today, and first and foremost, discipline. You said yourself that they're sensing weakness. You should have noticed it yourself. You own the cafe. Let's not talk about that now," Camille said irritably. "This is about your professional qualities, and it's important to me that you clean up the cafe." "All right, it's a deal. I'll be there in an hour." Having finished talking to him, she put the phone away on the nightstand and made a thoughtful face in her head. Immediately, there was a fleeting thought, and was it right that I called my son to help? He would think that I had failed. My inner gut began to tell me that I should act, relying on my own strength. But the mother's heart was drawn to the native blood of the kidney, and having made certain conclusions, Camille still chose the second option. With William, it would be possible to turn mountains. If she had done it earlier, then she would not have faced the problems that fell like from the horn of plenty. At the same time, Camille gained invaluable experience, and at certain moments it helped her a lot. She had even gotten away with it when there seemed to be no chance of escape. But now there were insurmountable difficulties, primarily because he had lost control over his subordinates, and they were increasingly working overtime. But she had no good reason to fire any of them. Or rather, she didn't have the courage to say goodbye. Camille decided to entrust this mission to her son to ward off the storm clouds. Again, it was not without mercantile interests. Although, if one judged it that way, she depended on him too. At the moment, the son was the only free salvation, and it's a good thing he agreed. He could have remembered all her antics. Camille, as imagined their meeting after a painful parting, and then a little bit even shivers ran down his spine, as if cold from somewhere it was pulled. Dialing the CES director's number again, she proudly told him, "We will fix everything. You'll see it tomorrow." Good. Cell phone rings. Glad to hear it. But if anything, the cafe will have to close. The man replied sneeringly, "Don't even think about it. I won't give you that opportunity." Camille felt relieved that she had partially solved her problems. All she had to do was wait for her son, who promised to correct her mistakes. He did not reproach her for taking on an impossible burden, but at the same time he made his position clear and made it clear that it was better to work together. She did not even argue with this, because she had experienced all the vicissitudes and intricacies of business, and if at first everything seemed to be a simple hobby, it soon turned into a heavy routine, and it required more and more dedication from her. And Camille couldn't get the last juices out of herself. And as a result, both the management system and the quality of service suffered. The SES representative quickly discovered this and demanded that it be fixed, but left a window of opportunity for a financial settlement, and it was up to her to take advantage of it. For now, Camille opted for her son's help in the hope that he would spare her the unnecessary expense. An hour later, as promised, William arrived, but not alone. Lisa arrived with him. She looked around fearfully, as if she were afraid of meeting monsters. In fact, she had a state of surprise. After all, it had been so long since Camille had invited them over to her place, playing the part of the cheap and grand business lady. And now this event, of course, it couldn't help but come as a shock. "Well, here we are." "Mom," right from the doorstep, said William, and put his arm around her shoulders. "As you can see, I'm not offended by you, and we can discuss everything in peace." "Thank you, son. I didn't expect to hear any other words from you." She nodded back at him. "Hello, Camille." Lisa greeted her quietly. "Hello, sister-in-law. Why are you so weak?" "I didn't eat enough porridge this morning." "No, I just had some." "Oh, you probably weren't planning on coming to see me." "But to be honest, I wasn't, because you haven't called us in a while." "Mom, you called me looking for a reason to fight." William frowned. "No, son, not even a thought." I shook my head. "I was just checking just in case you really did have other plans, and you had to change them because of me. That's okay. We'll do it some other time, especially since your problems are more important. And I wanted to get straight to the point so I could get them done by tomorrow." "Maybe I'll have tea and cake then," Camille suggested. "I'd like that. I like desserts. What about you?" "Lisa, I'd love to. I like cake." "Well, that's fine. Come on then, sister-in-law. Help me set the table." "What am I supposed to do?" William looked at them in surprise. "Oh, I almost forgot. Here's Stephen's number. Call him and clear up the situation. Anyway, plug in. Time's running out. I do not want to blush tomorrow in front of the SES. Besides, I told them, or rather, the director, that we'll fix it. I'll see what I can do." His mother and Lisa went to the kitchen, and he started calling Stephen. He answered only after the second ring and didn't immediately realize who was bothering him. "Sorry, I didn't recognize William. How long will you live?" "Thank you. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how to fix all the problems. After all, they didn't arise on a single day, and it's obvious that the staff has been unraveling the situation for a long time. And you didn't follow up on it properly. But you know I'm gonna talk about this right now, so get pen and paper ready. Meanwhile, mother-in-law and daughter-in-law were busy preparing for the tea party. Besides the cake, which was cut into small pieces, they decided to make sandwiches on the table, and immediately smoked sausage appeared, followed by cheese, tomatoes, cucumbers, and salad leaves. And it was all topped off with a prefabricated arrangement of waffles and candy in the crystal vase. What William was talking to Stephen about, they weren't even listening. They didn't seem at all interested in how events were unfolding there, and one could assume that all their attention was focused on their own communication. In other words, Camille and Bulega were trying to establish contact, and they succeeded quite well because they did everything smoothly and without disagreements. In any case, no one teased or rushed them. Camille even complimented Lisa on the quality of the slicing. She liked the way her sister-in-law put the cheese and sausage on the plates, and also noted the interesting combination of sandwich layers. Overall, the meeting was a success after a long standoff. Although, to be honest, Camille was worried that they would not find common ground and fight in the first minute. But that didn't happen, and the storm clouds had bypassed them. Looking at the treat, she smiled contentedly and said, "I definitely like our tandem. What do you think?" "I think so too." "I agree," Lisa nodded. "All the more so because you were kind to me and didn't throw me out on my doorstep." "Well, how could I do that?" Camille shrugged. "Invite you in and then walk out the door." "No, I've never stooped so low as to go to all that trouble." "What happened with the cafe?" "It's just little things, but they need to be dealt with. I hope William can do that so I don't have to close the place down." "Even so." "But why?" It was obvious that Lisa did not ask questions out of idle curiosity. She was really worried about the fate of the cafe, even though she had nothing to do with it. "The trouble is that I've gotten too caught up in my image," Camille replied sadly with a heavy sigh. "I visited beauty salons, fashion boutiques, but I forgot about the main thing. Cafe requires attention, like any other business. And if you let everything go, then you can say goodbye to wives and money. You're right, you need control everywhere. It's hard to imagine stability without it. I trade things at the market, and it seems to be nothing complicated. But if I get distracted, I lose part of the profit or goods." I heard William's voice, and that's where the conversation had to stop. Anyway, he and I solved the main problems, but I still have to go there now. I want to make sure that my words have reached their intended recipients, and if you'll let me, I'll assign individual tasks to the staff. "Well done. You can see that there is a commercial spirit," she praised her son. "And who do you plan to punish?" "Well, to think with their heads and work on their conscience. I don't know yet. I'll come and with Stephen we'll decide what to do," shrugged William. "By the way, what should I tell him about his current position? You're the manager now, and if you think he'll be useful, keep him as an assistant." "I will." "That's exactly what I was gonna ask you. The kid's not bad. From the way we talked to him just now," he answered clearly. "He was nervous though, but it's no big deal. And as for those who caused the trouble, I'll find a way to talk some sense into them without negative consequences. Everything is in your hands." "Go ahead," Camille nodded. "You have broad authority. Think of it as acting on my behalf." "It's a deal. Then I'll go right away." "What about the cake and sandwiches?" Lisa asked in surprise. "I'll come back and eat. If you leave some for me." William smiled and kissed her on the cheek. "And Mother?" "Yes, I almost forgot. You can go now. Lisa and I will take care of her." Looking at his watch, William furrowed his brow. "What were you thinking about for a minute?" Then waved his hand at them and left the apartment. At that moment, he had only one thought: to solve his mother's problems and get home as soon as possible. Though she didn't persecute, he still felt out of place, burdensome and onerous. It seemed to him an invitation, all the more so at the most unexpected moment. William couldn't believe his mother was doing all this unselfishly, well or heartily wishing to make up with him. He knew her character perfectly well, and more than once was convinced that it could not be corrected. His mother would rather make strangers relatives than condescend to him. And this was no exaggeration, for she had never been able to admit her own mistakes. As soon as she had a problem, she immediately turned to her son for help, but not even a word about the fact that she acted very meanly towards him and his fiancée. It was not in her speeches, only restrained emotion and pleas for help. You see, business was starting to fall apart, and something had to be done. William agreed to help without any preconditions. He only hinted that he would solve her problems in his own way. Otherwise, as far as personal relationships were concerned, he remained modestly silent, and that only earned him points with his mother. In fact, he did not say sorry, but "You spit in my soul, and I will not save you." No such words came out of his mouth. On the contrary, William felt her distress and came without delay to take the situation into his own hands. But he brought Lisa as a symbol of the family relationship. It was necessary to let the mother realize that they are with her as a whole, love each other, and are not going to part. In addition, the wedding was in the plans as a finishing touch, as well as the beginning of a new path in their lives. And naturally, it would not do without children. In any case, their birth William did not reject, only suggested Lisa, first to get a little stronger and on her feet. It was necessary to prepare carefully for the replenishment, so as not to meet him with empty pockets. After he left for the cafe, Camille, in her right as hostess, placed the tea into mugs and set out a stick of cream. It smells so good. It's like it just came from the plantation. I always buy only the highest grade, and in a familiar tea shop, she boasted to her daughter-in-law, "We don't drink the expensive kind, but it's good too." Lisa shrugged. "That's okay. You've got it all ahead of you, and I didn't come to it right away either." On the other hand, it's all about brains. If they work properly, you can achieve a lot. Not everybody can do what you do, even with a bright head. I think it's important to have support in the beginning. And if you don't have that, it's hard to make your way in life on your own. Nonsense. And I did. And you and William will do great. But you're gonna have to work on yourself. What do you mean? Lisa's eyebrows furrowed, sensing a catch. Yeah, relax. I just wanted to tell you not to stand in one place, she clarified. Her argument: you need to develop, to gain knowledge, a new profession, finally. Well, I'm not sitting at home working. That's understandable. But the market is not the end of the world. You're not going to spend your life selling things. I guess not. But I haven't thought about it yet. Lisa shrugged. You should. Otherwise, you'll regret the opportunities you missed. Taking a sip from her mug, she added, and the best thing is to change your line of work. I don't have a college degree, so a job in a prestigious company is out of the question. Why are you so down in the dumps? You can start small, like waitressing. Are you by any chance referring to your cafe? Lisa asked with a smile. To be honest, yes, especially since William has already agreed. Now he's just getting up to speed and becoming a full-fledged manager. I want to expand, and with the state of affairs as they are at the moment, it's hard to dream of anything. Maybe I can do it, but it takes practice. I've never worked in the service industry. There's a first time for everything, even when we're first born. Don't think that I'm offering you a waitress job on purpose, and you'll think that your mother-in-law is sending you to the bottom. You didn't start out on the top either, Lisa reminded her. So why should I take offense to that? Every job is honored. It doesn't matter what you're doing at the moment. If you're honest and conscientious, there's no talking. Just respect and gratitude for that you don't have to worry about. I don't hurt anyone with money, Camille smiled. All my employees are paid on time, and none of them has ever complained. I'll have to have a word with William. I think he'll be pleased to know that his wife has decided to work with him. So you're saying he's definitely going to be the manager? I'm pretty sure of it. Camille declared proudly. There's not much money to be made at the firm where he works now. And I have the opportunity to move up. Where else? Lisa was surprised. For example, as a cafe director or even owner. Time will tell. It all depends on him. Will you be without your business? No, everything will stay with me. I'll just open a new outlet and manage it there. Because I've agreed to do it as a combination for now. Stephen will stay on as an assistant. See if we can get the cafe out of the doldrums. You have such grandiose plans. It's heartwarming. Lisa smiled, and her eyes sparkled. So I didn't invite you here for nothing. The result is obvious. Camille nodded, and they even clapped their hands. William won't be able to quit right away because he has to test his own strength. But you can start waitressing tomorrow. Thank you, Camille. That's so kind of you. I'm speechless. How can I express my gratitude? Do a good job, and that will be enough. Oh, and love my son without cheating or lying. I wasn't going to do that. With a kind of resentment in her voice, Lisa replied and pouted her lips. Well, don't be offended. I didn't say it out of spite. Camille ran her hand over her head like a mother. But it's important to me, too, that William be in good hands, and not to know grief, as families do when trust fails. And in its place comes meanness and betrayal. Yes, I hear you. You can rest assured of my honesty. I always work, and have always worked with complete dedication. There you go. I haven't even hired her as a waitress at my cafe yet, and I've already humiliated her, and did not even blink an eye, but pretended as if nothing had happened. It is possible that her employees did the same to her, because she did not put them in anything, but decided not to talk about it yet. It was only in a private conversation with Stephen that her son found out, and frankly, he was shocked. True, he did not abandon the case halfway through and brought it to its logical conclusion. In fact, he saved the cafe from closure, and the mother helped to save her reputation. After all, about her could go bad word of mouth, and then the customers would have stopped coming. That seemed to be Camille's greatest fear, not that she had offended her sister-in-law again. It didn't make her feel unbalanced or even compelled to apologize, as she should have done, especially since she knew how the relationship between Lisa and her son had developed. William almost carried his wife in his arms, blew dust from her, and made her happy with his successes at work. Together, they were willing to go to great lengths to achieve their happiness. Let's eat another piece and leave these for William, Camille suggested, looking enigmatically at the cake. I second that, nodded Liza. And while they were enjoying the dessert, William was giving a lecture to the staff, but not threatening them with dismissal, but asking them to get smart. Yeah, you gotta realize you can't relax. You're gonna be looking for a new job later, so we should just put in our applications right now. They all asked him. No, you don't have to do that yet. He shook his head. But if you don't get smart, my mother will throw you out on the street and not care that some people have families and financial problems. We understand, William, and we'll try to live up to that trust. Good. Especially since Stephen is staying with you. Yes, he'll be my assistant, but other than that, he'll have the same responsibilities. And believe me, I'm not going to humiliate any of you. We will resolve all issues through compromise, Stephen added. And no problem will go unaddressed. Yes, that's right. And now we need to close the cafe for preventive maintenance and put it in order. Tomorrow, representatives of the Sanitary and Epidemiological Service will come to inspect the place. We must make sure that they did not find a single comment or violation. We'll do our best. Maybe you can rely on us. Again, the staff replied in unison and began to put things in order. You see, and no one had to be punished. William looked at Stephen and patted him on the shoulder. How will you explain Camille to your mother? I'll say that I solved everything peacefully and without firing anyone. I'm not in favor of radical methods, although I will not hide that when I was going, I wanted to make a mess. But then I came, assessed the situation, listened, and came to the conclusion that my mother is not a gift either. On the one hand, yes, but Stephen hesitated, trying to find the right words. But she's the owner of the cafe, and that says it all. William interrupted him, and at the same time logically completed the phrase. That's what I meant. And you will be combining, as I understand it. Yes, that's right. And then we'll see. I'm in no hurry. No one's pushing me around at my day job, and the management respects me, so I don't see the point in changing anything yet. Isn't that like the horse in the crosshairs thing? Stephen said and smiled embarrassedly, something like that. Now go command the team and deal with the ventilation today. The repair crew will be here soon. I've already put in a requisition. I'll be expecting them any minute. And don't forget about the alcohol. Don't let that guy touch it again. What if you do? The first time lying down, he won't understand. They'll kick you out. We don't want any trouble. What if he gets drunk in the middle of the day and shows up like that in front of the guests? There will be a scandal, and with a blow to the reputation of the cafe, nodded Stephen, and even a little sweat, imagining such a picture. I'll be sure to keep an eye on him to make sure he doesn't do anything wrong. That's good. Keep up the good work. I've got to go. Goodbye, William. And thanks for your kindness. Come on, we'll make it up to you. Today I helped you. Tomorrow you'll do me a favor. William was kind to Stephen, and Stephen was pleased. He didn't have to pack up and leave the cafe. In addition, nothing out of the ordinary happened, although the son of the landlady wanted to publicly punish someone. But it didn't happen, because Lisa kept him from taking rash steps. She understood more than anyone else what respect and honesty were. And if she heard negative things about herself, it didn't mean that she had to mirror them. Lisa did not allow herself to use profanity because she considered it a sign of ignorance and tried to keep her emotions in check, even if she wanted to take them out on someone. She would endure the inner pain and simply walk away in silence. William knew this and was careful to say every word. That was the basis of their family relationship. Coming home from the cafe back to his mother's house, he had no idea what she would tell him. Even more surprising was that Lisa had been supportive, even though it had never been idyllic between them before. And with his new worries, it was a serious test for his nervous system. At the same time, he did not risk dissuading his wife from her decision. I'm shocked, to be honest. I didn't expect it, William said. After Lisa announced the offer of a waitressing job. Why not? Better than standing in the market, Camille shrugged. Besides, they pay tips, and not bad ones at that. Sometimes, and not a day's wages exceeds. All right, let them try. If they don't like it, they'll leave. I talked to the team and realized that they cannot work normally. Wow, I thought it was the other way around. No, Mom, it's fine. It's just that they got a little slack and decided to do me a favor and leave me without a cafe. She snidely continued the line for him. No, you're just imagining things. William reassured her. You'll see that after a while everything will change and the cafe will be transformed for the better. Its name will rumble all over the neighborhood and attract crowds of customers. I'd like to believe that, especially since I don't plan to close. I need a new location to keep growing. Yes, William. Lisa nodded. Your mom wants you to take over the cafe in the future and run the new place herself. It's like the plan of the century. I can't add or subtract. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We'll see what happens. But for the near future, representatives of the SES or any other inspection organizations will definitely not bother your cafe. Consider it already yours. I decided so. Camille moved to him a plate with a piece of cake. A treat. Lisa and I have had enough. And there are sandwiches left if you want some. You can eat at my place. You won't have to cook anything. Thank you. I really did work up an appetite. William enjoyed the cake, but he looked at his wife and mother. Her bad character and the situation didn't add up. It was too sugary. Everything looked as if a thick layer of honey had been smeared on, but there was still tar underneath. And if it was not removed and checked at once, then at the very end one could come across bitterness and humiliation. Thinking about it, William decided not to jump to conclusions. It was one thing for his wife to want to work in the cafe, but it was another thing for her mother to treat her the same way. After all, judging by what he had heard from the staff, he could expect anything from her. And that was worrying, because she hadn't worried about her daughter-in-law's future before. And this is so generous. It's like a free cheese in a mousetrap, but no trap. I had to wonder where the catch was, where to look for it, so as not to be in a stupid position. William didn't know the answers to these questions yet, but he took note of them to keep the situation under control. He didn't want to be left in the lurch and lose his wife. Lisa was an impressionable person, and sometimes she took events to heart. William, of course, tried to explain that it was not necessary to let everything pass through him. But he realized that everyone's state of mind was different, and it was impossible to predict in advance this or that reaction. So it turned out that one hand pushed his wife into the maelstrom, and the other sought to protect her from trouble. And it seemed that there had been no significant shocks lately, except for minor incidents in public places. Lisa, every now and then, got into curious situations. Not that she provoked them on purpose. They just sort of found her. I remember how she once helped an old man and picked up a purse from the floor of the bus, which he dropped. So instead of thanking Lisa, the old man scolded her for embezzling his change, even though the wallet was empty. Only documents were there. It was hard, but the old man was calmed down. Just before he left, he suddenly remembered that he had taken money for exactly 2 trips. At that moment, Lisa almost sobbed, but she pulled herself together in time. And all because the old man apologized. The incident was over, but it still left a residue. Since then, she's been cautious of any good intentions. Surprisingly, she was sympathetic to her mother-in-law's proposal. She didn't analyze and compare facts. In general, she took her word as a native person, despite the fact that she and William had been at odds until recently. On the other hand, she could not hold a grudge for long. She had a tremulous and tender heart, and the residue of any unpleasantness had dissolved. And Lisa was like a dandelion again. Anger and hatred didn't take root in her soul. They a priori did not find a source of realization to strike an unexpected blow. William, having recovered from the cake, ate his sandwiches, and as he drank his tea, his mother suddenly asked him, "Listen, son, why don't you and Lisa move in with me? Interesting movie, but we'd rather stay at home for now." "We'll live," he answered, and inwardly tensed at such a proposal. "Well, look, if you think so, I'd be glad to see you. We need time. Such questions are not solved in a hurry." Lisa supported her husband. "Sooner or later you'll formalize your relationship," Camille continued, "and I'd like to see you two together all the time. That way there will be harmony in the family, and it will be easier to help each other. We'll think about it, especially since we're used to the way of life we have between us," William replied, and thus drew a line under their conversation about a possible move. And I realized I wouldn't insist. Decisions like this take maturity. And as my sister-in-law rightly said, it's best not to get emotional. Yeah, they're not the best counselors in this case. "I agree," Lisa nodded. "Well, shall we pack up then? Thank you for your hospitality. Everything was delicious." "Aha, apart from the cake and sandwiches, I didn't offer you anything. The whole day just kind of flew by." "That's okay. We didn't come here to eat. We're here to solve your problems and make a difference." "That's true. But still, I apologize for the meager table," she said guiltily, lowering her head. "I liked it, just like home." Lisa put her arm around her shoulders and at the same second removed her hands. It felt like a hot surface. "Thanks for the compliment. And don't forget what I told you. Anything can happen in life. And this is stability. All right. Thank you for your wise counsel." William and Lisa left the apartment, and Camille crouched down and cupped her head with her hands. What she was thinking at that moment, one could only guess, but the nervousness around the problems was very alarming, and primarily because they were the main indicators of impending collapse. Camille did not tell her son that the chair was wobbling beneath her. And it was still unknown how her future fate could have turned out. She did not dare to reveal the main cards in the hope that by that time her son would decide everything for her. But he didn't have all the information and power. And in the end, he almost found himself between a hammer and an anvil. And only the wife again found a way out of the situation. Lisa gave the last thing she had to save the family. But by then it was clear William's mother was in grave danger. And ironically, she had created it for herself. Even bravado, trying to minimize the loss. But that didn't help either. And after a while, the shocking truth came to the surface. The only person who had the vaguest inkling of it was Camille's own sister. Miranda watched her business endeavors from the sidelines, but stayed out of the way with unnecessary advice. She had enough of her own worries to take on other problems as well. At the same time, Miranda was genuinely worried about her sister and hoped that she hadn't fallen into a trap. After all, business, in addition to the investment of money and time, could take away the most important life. And such cases happened when businessmen lost. At first, they also started easily and effortlessly, and then everything flew into the abyss. And it was good if they managed to save themselves at the very last moment. Such people were called lucky. But there were also those to whom fate did not smile, and then only a marble or granite slab somewhere at the edge of the road reminded of them. Of course, Camille did not want such a fate for herself, but she could not help but realize what she had gotten herself into. All the more reason to use other people's money for her own well-being. And her sister had warned her about that. When it first started, that's what she used to say. "Look, Camille, it'll all go down the drain. You'll be looking for the fifth corner." "Nothing will happen to me," Camille said. "And I was born under a lucky star. In case of emergency, my son will help me and won't go anywhere. But I don't want to have to do it myself." This conversation took place just as Camille was having her final quarrel with William. He wouldn't take her advice, and he wouldn't leave Lisa. And to keep her out of the way and keep her mind off him, he moved with his wife across town. Camille had not visited them all this time, and they had no desire to ask for a visit. And today's meeting, frankly, had been confusing. William didn't expect his mother to ask for help, but I couldn't say no, because then I'd hate myself. Inside, he still held out hope that his mother would change her attitude toward him and Lisa. But time flew by, and there were no signals from her. In fact, neither of them wanted to make the first step. And in this situation, pride was an obstacle. If one had been offended once, it wasn't certain that it wouldn't happen again. That's what was holding them back. Like a red rag for a bull during a bullfight, and at the same time it was impossible to concentrate on more important details. It was as if they had spoken in an unknown direction. Leaving behind a hazy trail, William tried to put all the puzzles of the Rebuses together, but eventually abandoned the endeavor. He lacked the stamina to find the missing link in the long chain of events. In addition, there was partially no logic with which to explain anything. When they arrived home, William and Lisa breathed a sigh of relief. It felt as if they had been interrogated. They barely got out of there, forgetting everything. They threw off their shoes and sat down on the sofa together and said in one voice, "What a day it's been today." I could hardly refrain from saying it to my mother's face. William shook his head. Lisa's eyebrows furrowed at the cafe. "No, about the natural relationship, I thought it was strange that she would take such a step. She said she'd never turn to us in her life, and she said a lot of other things. But we're not vindictive people, and we found the strength to forgive your mother. She's not a gift, but she's not a stranger to us. I haven't seen her eager to be related to us lately." William's hesitating. "If you think that a couple of words spoken on the fly is a sign of kinship, you are mistaken. But what is it really? Did your mom try so hard? Are you looking for a black cat in a dark room again?" "Yeah, because I don't believe she's sincere. I helped her with her problems at the cafeteria. I'll let her work it out from here." "So you didn't do everything angrily?" Lisa asked and shook her head. "I just started. And if you want to understand, you have to go into it thoroughly, and then everything will fall into place. So what's the matter? Your mother offered you the manager's job. I'll have to think about it. I'm sensing a catch. I just can't figure out what it is. There doesn't seem to be anything to worry about, except for the SES nagging, but I still feel uneasy. I was also kind of wary of her offer to work as a waitress in a cafe. But then I thought and came to the conclusion that if we make a concerted effort, then who knows? Suddenly, the establishment will really be ours to roll up our lips. Mother would never go for that, even though she promised a gold mine. William put her down. I think we should be very careful with her. But you heard her offer to sign the cafe over to you. Lisa stood her ground. That's right. And that's what worries me the most. Why hasn't she had that idea before? You don't think my mother wants to get rid of all her problems in one fell swoop? I don't think so. I mean, aside from those SES complaints you've practically dealt with, there's nothing there. Where would they come from? Besides, she would have told you about them. Yeah, Lisa, we've been living with you for almost a year, and I still haven't realized that my mom knows how to manipulate people. I didn't even realize it. I shrugged. That's what was going on today. And you left. William poked fun at her and accepted a waitressing position. So you didn't refuse to help her either. I told her not to go. What did you say? Yeah, you're right about that. We both let her talk us into it. And the interesting thing is, nobody forced us to go. If you're lucky enough to be born with the gift of persuasion, you use it all your life. Let's give it a shot. You'll combine your day job with running the cafe. I'll start working as a waitress. I can quit the market tomorrow. The owner won't be upset. Maybe she's right, and we're just screwing ourselves. William replied thoughtfully. It's just that, she hasn't contacted us for a long time. And now she's offered us such goodies. And most importantly, she didn't ask for anything in return. It was as if she decided to give up everything. Not to be dramatic, not to inflame the situation. Lisa put her arm around his shoulders and kissed him gently. Time will tell and put everything in its place. And if we are right, it will be a life lesson for us. Yeah, I guess that's what we'll do. Don't go looking for a black cat where there's never been one. We gave ourselves a headache for nothing, and now we don't know how to get rid of it. I've got a good remedy, and you know what I mean. Lisa pulled him into the bedroom, and William's eyes lit up with anticipation of a passionate night. Such a remedy. Not only did the headache go away, but any other soreness stopped reminding of itself. Not only that, there was a burning desire to do good deeds. The body received such a powerful charge of vigor that it was enough for several days. And finally, the state of health improved. And in women also the emotional background. At the same time, the doubts that arose did not just cause them to have a heated discussion. Most likely, intuition worked, and there was dissonance in making further decisions. After all, William's mother once again. After all, William's mother really did not spoil with such gifts. She was only trying to make herself feel good. Naturally, under such circumstances, it is time to think about mercantile interests, and not only to earn trust, but also to benefit in this regard. Camille is quite good at it. At the dawn of creating a business and opening a cafe, she did not think about the difficulties she would have to face. And the first alarm bell in the form of a half-empty hall at rush hour forced her to take extreme measures. She started spending money unnecessarily, and that led to some accounting irregularities. With difficulty, but some things were resolved. But the biggest problem remained, and after a while, it got to her head. Yes, so that I left confused, however, got rid of all their barking, and with tears in my eyes thanked for the rescue. She was literally pulled out of the trap at the last moment, just a little bit more, and there would have been a new granite slab by the road. And so she got off with a slight scare and finished her business epic. Didn't take what turned out to be a heavy load. It was not for nothing that her sister told her she'd be better off doing something quiet. The next day, William went to his main job, and Lisa called the owner of the trading tent and agreed with him on a 2-week vacation at her own expense. Whatever she said, her intuition told her the right thing to do, so she didn't hurry to quit her job. At the same time, and warned her husband that he did not particularly rush into the documents, did not take responsibility if her mother offered to sign any papers. The premonition of trouble did not leave Lisa until the very last moment, up to the day when the unpleasant event happened, and immediately after it the flywheel of global changes spun, which almost pulled everyone who in one way or another had something to do with the cafe. Having arrived at the new place of work, Lisa first of all assessed the situation and realized that there were enough problems in the year that they had not been here. There had been dramatic changes. Some things had gotten better, others had fallen into disrepair. But the saddest thing was that people were passing by more and more often, not even looking inside, not even with one eye. All said that the mother-in-law lost her way and, without realizing it, pulled the business to the bottom. No wonder she needed her son's help. I didn't feel right wearing that hat. I thought I had the strength to cope with any problems, but it turned out to require courage and fortitude. And so she stalled out. Opening the glass door, Lisa entered the cafe, and when she saw her mother-in-law behind the bar, she said hello loudly. "Good afternoon, Camille." "Hello, sister-in-law. You haven't decided to take me up on my offer." "Yeah. What have I got to lose? It's not my last day." "I live in," she shrugged her shoulders and announced the hall with a look. "What about the market? You won't regret it with a squint." My mother-in-law asked. "No, it's all right. It's not a big loss. Besides, you promised career advancement. And that's the most important thing at my age. I like the way you think. And if you finally decided to work for me, I'd love to introduce you to the team. You have to start somewhere." Lisa nodded and followed her into the kitchen, where her mother-in-law had invited all the employees. Once in the main house of the cafe, as in any other place, she was saddened by the dull interior. Not to say she had the professional skills of a designer, but not gloomy. And even the incongruity at some points was just conspicuous. And that said that the hostess had no taste at all. But at the same time, her home was in perfect order. And in this regard, I wondered if she valued the reputation of the cafe at all. After all, everything starts in the kitchen. But Lisa decided not to say it out loud, so as not to incur the unjustified wrath of her mother-in-law. Today was to be her first day of work, after all. It was not enough for them to quarrel over nothing and then become blood enemies for the rest of their lives. Lisa couldn't afford that. All the more so because she had promised her husband to hold out for at least a week. For some reason, he decided to conduct an experiment and check other versions of the problems. "Well, here are all my subordinates. You will work with them." The mother-in-law pointed to the crowd of young people. "Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lisa. I'm here to apply for a waitress position. If you'd like to join your team, I'd appreciate it. Join us. We'll all make money together," answered one of the girls. "My name is Christina, and I'm also a waitress." "That's great. I already have a date. Will you be interning with her?" Camille said, looking contentedly at Christina. "And make sure the customers are always happy. Otherwise, you will not make money on them, and I on you and double the amount." "That's right, Camille," the subordinate said with glee. "Now get back to your workplace. There's nothing to crowd here." The employees began to come out of the kitchen one by one, extending their hands to Lisa and calling her name. She nodded in response, but she couldn't remember half of them. Christina looked at her with a smile and said cheerfully, "Don't even try. I could tell from your pensive look that you were mumbling their names to yourself. You shouldn't do that at work. You'll know everyone's face before you know it. It's hard at first, but then you'll get the hang of it. Thanks for the encouragement. I hope I learn quickly. I don't want to spend the whole internship on the bench," Lisa joked. And Christina took her humor to heart. "It's not soccer, but you'll have to run too. And most importantly, without letting yourself get hurt. In a way, does anyone fight here?" "No, Very rarely. However, there are customers who cling to beautiful waiters. They can pinch the soft spot and pull my arm. With me, such numbers do not pass, and I quickly put in place. And after that, the man comes to his senses for a long time. But this is categorically not to do. Shook her head Christina. We already have 2 girls because of such tricks left without a job. Camille believes that the customer is always right. Well, let her comfort herself. Or does she turn on her heel? I don't want any clients like that. And I'm not gonna let you get your hands dirty. Your business. And I told you, if you want my opinion, you won't last long with that kind of attitude. We'll look proudly in the mirror. Lisa. As they say, the eyes fear the hands. Confidence that she will succeed. Christina surprised me. After all, she came to the conclusion that it would not run away on the first day. But no, it didn't. And Lisa even managed to earn her first tip from a generous client. They, of course, were much less than the rest of the staff, but still pleasantly pleased. It was her first day and a small bonus. Praised her mother-in-law, appearing in the hall just before closing time. If you keep this up, you'll soon be earning more than your husband. Camille almost hesitated at the last word. Apparently, she wanted to say more than my son. But she realized it in time. She looked around and said the best possible thing. Lisa didn't correct her to avoid embarrassment. Otherwise, it would have been a disagreement. Thank you for your kind words, but it's better the other way around. She thanked her mother-in-law and left the cafe. It's up to you. But the career path is still on the table. Do you want a ride, or are you taking public transportation? The bus, Camille, the bus. It's more convenient for me. Okay, well, I'll see you tomorrow. She waved goodbye and added, William, say hi and thank you for your help. I will. After getting into the car, the mother-in-law turned around, put on the gas, and drove towards the center. Lisa waited for her bus at the bus stop and went home too. As soon as she crossed the threshold of the apartment, she was immediately picked up by her beloved husband. And how was your first day on the job, okay? I'd give it a solid B. Lisa winked at him. Okay. What did you take 1 point off for? Frowned his eyebrows for molesting their customers. 2 of them even tried to touch me. I should have told my mother. She would have sent them away. That's just it. She wouldn't have sent them away. Lisa answered evasively and shook her head. Why not? Because, in her opinion, the customer is always right, no matter what he does. That is, he can appeal to the waitresses. Angry? Asked William. It turns out it is, especially since they're used to it. Lisa shrugged. It's awful. You shouldn't have gone there in the first place. How's it going with you? Did you find out anything? Not yet, but when I was doing a remote report on my mom's computer, I noticed a folder with a password. It had an interesting name, X-Day. What does it mean? I'm not sure, but I'm guessing it holds something important. Best not to touch it. You'll end up getting blamed for it, she told him. That's what I thought. But you should be careful too. William kissed her on the cheek and took her into the kitchen. It turned out that he had prepared a romantic dinner for them to coincide with her first day at work. Lisa blushed and kissed him heartily on the lips, neck, and chin. In general, everywhere her lips reached. And this was the beginning of a stormy continuation of the emotional outburst. At the same time, ahead of them awaited a series of incredible events, which led to the long-awaited denouement. After all, they so zealously wanted to find out what was hiding in this cafe, and what skeleton was hidden in the closet under a heavy burden. Involuntarily triggered the mechanism of disclosure. The couple were horrified when the harsh truth was revealed. And on the surface surfaced not only personal problems, Camille, but also much more severe consequences. That's where the wave that almost swept them into the abyss came from. And only by a miracle did they manage to save themselves, by taking advantage of an unexpected offer from Lisa. Yes, she was the one who sacrificed part of her past to stop the wave, and she was hailed as a hero for her courageous act. But that X-Day, as William read in the folder, was still 5 whole days away. He continued to help his mother periodically, building up the business and bringing in more clients. Lisa, on the other hand, was gaining experience as a waitress. And I must say that she was even better at serving customers in the cafe than she was at selling things at the market, especially since there she had to sell it profitably to get a percentage from the owner. And here it was enough that she brought the order on time and smiled languidly. Men themselves reached into their wallets to pay a generous tip. Others were not stingy at all and laid out on the table without looking at the denomination of banknotes. It came to the point that they managed to earn a month's salary in one day. But not always, and not everyone was so lucky. Usually in the evening or on weekends, and the waiters took advantage of it. They were carefully prepared to serve their customers to the highest standards. Lisa didn't try to squeeze the last of the money out of a customer. If he tipped, she thanked him profusely. If not, she simply said thank you. Come back anytime. And after a while this information reached her mother-in-law. She didn't think much of it at first. And when such tricks began to happen on a regular basis, she decided to teach her daughter-in-law a lesson. She sent an invitation to the kitchen through Christina. Camille stood outside the door, holding a large stainless pot in her hand. What she was going to do with it remained a mystery for now. But as soon as Lisa entered the kitchen, her mother-in-law abruptly opened the lid and poured over her daughter-in-law's head the leftover food from the table, and then set the pot on the table. She looked at her squeamishly and said these words, "Don't dishonor my graying head." "For what?" Camille, with tears in her eyes, shouted Lisa. At the same time, Christina stood behind her back and smiled evilly. "That's for not wanting to work like everyone else." My mother-in-law smelled of booze. It was a sign that she'd taken a drink before she was tortured. "If it's about the tips, you can collect them yourself. In fact, I don't want to stay here anymore." "Well, that's good. You're free to go. We don't need your services anymore. Is that right?" "Yes, Camille." The staff replied with a chorus of cheers and drooped their heads. They clearly didn't have the courage to tell the landlady the truth to her face. But Lisa didn't expect a gesture of goodwill from them. She looked at the crowd as contemptuously as her mother-in-law and shook her head dejectedly. She simply felt sorry for the young people who had become dependent on an exploitative employer. She could stay and continue to grovel before this homegrown business lady. Lisa said goodbye. "What did you say?" Her mother-in-law furrowed her brow and tried to pounce on her with her fists. "Just try it. You are no longer my head of the housing department. I will put you in your place." "Well, Otter, I shouldn't have gotten involved with you." Slamming the door, the mother-in-law left the kitchen and went to her office. Lisa turned to Christina and said angrily, "And you will regret that he poisoned Camille on me. I know it was you who made her follow me, but you realize she's miffed." "Christina, I don't want to hear anything, and you'd better get out of my sight." The calm and poised Lisa had lost her temper, and that was a sure sign that she was really pissed off. Normally, she'd keep her emotions in check in these situations, but she just couldn't. And better now than never. Sooner or later, she was gonna have to show her character. Except it never got through to the people it was meant for. With their heads down, they left the kitchen, and in the meantime Lisa cleaned herself up. She got rid of the remnants of her meal and rinsed her hair lightly under warm water, then hailed a cab and headed home to inform her husband of his mother's egregious antics. Upon seeing his wife's disheveled hair, William immediately realized there was trouble. "Calm down and tell me in order. What happened?" He put her on the sofa. He brought tea in a glass and made her make 2 goals. Period. It's just unthinkable. "Your mother humiliated me in front of everyone," cried Lisa. "All because of that damn tip. And what did she do? Just don't fall off the couch when you hear this." Lisa told him how she was first called into the kitchen and then had the leftovers poured over her head in front of everyone. And it was his own mother who had done the humiliating act. And she was under the influence of alcohol, and they mocked her squeamishly. The cafe staff stood and watched, unable to say anything to her. Now my mom had completely buried our relationship, and I honestly wanted it back. but I guess I'll just have to let it go. And most importantly, I'm sending her a gift. Make her happy. Maybe one last time before she loses her business. What are you talking about? With concern in your voice, Lisa asked, and even stopped crying. They say that's how the attendance will drop. That's all. William shrugged and winked at her. I see, but she'll have to make her own way. We agreed to help her, and in return we were humiliated again. In fact, William hadn't told his wife about the gift he'd sent her mother. The thing is, he managed to find the password to that encrypted folder and find out all the information it contained. To be honest, he even felt bad about what he read. However, William did not dare to sound the alarm because he realized his mother's cunning plan. She did not just want to register the cafe on him. She needed to get rid of a lot of problems, and first of all, somehow put the creditors on a false trail. She borrowed money from them for the promotion at a high interest rate, and all because the lenders turned out to be gangsters. They laundered money this way. But they did not even think of forgiving debts, regardless of the gender and age of the borrower. They didn't care who they beat the money out of, as long as they got their money back. Camille fell into a trap after William withdrew his support and also removed all his work from his computer. She began to have global problems. There were fewer and fewer visitors day by day. Profits were gradually declining. But X day, on the contrary, was approaching. And the less time there was left, the more anxious she became. Camille was worried sick, and when the bandits called and demanded to return the debt, she panicked and turned to her son again. But William wouldn't hear of it. You're the one who ruined a good cause. We went out of our way to help you, and you took it upon yourself to humiliate my wife. Well, forgive me, you scoundrel. I'm ready to make amends. She wept in fear for her life. Well, first I have to pay off my creditors. I realize you invited us here for a reason. You wanted to hang on to your debts to make our lives easier. I'm ashamed of what I've done, son. And this business, for crying out loud. And that low act in the kitchen. I could go on and on about my mistakes, but it's not gonna make me feel any better. I'm not making any promises. I'll talk to Lisa and call you back. In the meantime, can you sell your car? It's still not enough. But I'll wait, son. If you can think of something, I'll be grateful to you for the rest of my life. William discussed the impending disaster looming over his mother with his wife, and she again agreed to help. Despite both being angry at her mother-in-law for publicly humiliating her, figuring out their options, they had raised a third of the amount needed in a few days. Together with the car, it was exactly half. They had to find the rest of the money for the loan. So Lisa suggested selling Grandma's house. It was her only reminder of her past. But after weighing up the pros and cons, she came to the conclusion that human life was more precious. William, of course, crushed, but also did not sit idly by. He himself approached the creditors and persuaded them to wait another month. In the end, during this time, they managed to sell Grandma's house. True, they had to lower the price to get cash at once, but there was nowhere to go. Camille's life was at stake. She caused problems, and they were solved by the whole neighborhood. Naturally, the cafe had to close because the money ran out. But the creditors were paid off and they got rid of her. What she experienced during this time could only be guessed. She didn't leave the house to go to the store and back. She was afraid that the bandits would chase her and send her to the other world. But it did not happen because William agreed with them. He assumed all obligations to repay the loan. His mother thanked them for a long time, especially Lisa for her miraculous rescue, and promised not to get into the business again. Moreover, she insisted that they move to live with her because they had to give all their savings to the creditors. On the other hand, this story became a lesson for them and a hint that one should be able to forgive. It is understandable that it is difficult to forget humiliation and meanness, but no one is immune to it. And when unforeseen circumstances arise, it's no time to be proud. And that's exactly what Lisa and William did. And they didn't regret it. They finally managed to find a common denominator and eliminate all the barriers. They had been in the way for a long time, but everything had its time. The moment of truth came when fate turned to them and helped them to find peace under one roof and in the circle of a large and friendly family.